Welcome to Cards Hub 365 here on Sports Hub STL. I was a late arrival to this show.
There you are. Found you.
Magically appeared out of nowhere, almost out of the void, like the Cardinals are trying to do on their next road trip. Jim Hayes, the cat, has said that he has issued 2 spirit wins for the off day, so that's fantastic. It is an incredibly spiritual day as a new pope has been elected. We'll touch on that, but it's important to remind you that this show is powered by Gray Bar. All content is provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Stefan, Caray, Brenden, Schaeffer, as previously mentioned, it was a very fun homestand for the Cardinals, taking 5 of 6, of course, finishing off with a sweep over the Pirates, something they needed to do. Now they're back to 500 and looking like a completely different team.
They look great. They're making great decisions, although I don't know, picking a guy from Chicago. You know, Luken Baker didn't have a huge role on the roster lately, but Stefan, I just am not sure about a guy from Chicago taking his spot on the active roster, but we'll see. We'll get into it as we go. I thought this was a Pope podcast. I'm finding out more and more that it is about baseball. The Cardinals, though, 5 in a row, back to a 500 record. We know they play great at home. I believe only the Cardinals and the Dodgers now with 15 wins at home this season in MLB, tied for the most. We'll see what happens now as they go on this road trip that begins tomorrow, but this feels like a pretty pivotal spot in the season. If you want to be one of those Cardinals fans that says, hey, I'm clinging to belief in this team, I see the pieces coming together, this could be the stretch of games where we get a chance to see that really come to fruition, I think, for the Cardinals, if they can continue the momentum that they supplied over the homestand.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Some roster moves being made for the Cardinals. We'll touch on that in a moment. But to continue your point about the new Pope, I know we always try to attract a mass audience. We just didn't necessarily mean a mass audience. So
you are your father's son. There's no doubt about it. Well done.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is going to be a tremendous day for 1.8 billion people across the world to meet the new Pope. The Cardinals fans excited about their prospects coming up against the Washington Nationals, who are in our nation's capital, not necessarily the holy land of the American dream, but our nation's capital over the next 3 games. It's going to be a fantastic matchup for the Cardinals, who yet again could take advantage against another embattled National League team. They have struggled against the National League East, though. Before we get into that, something you're a little bit more passionate about. We talked about it off the air. I saw it on Twitter, some interactions. Luken Baker being sent down. To me, this makes all the sense in the world. With Ivan Herrera being activated, you have a better hitter in Herrera. You have a more seasoned hitter in Herrera, a right-handed hitter in Herrera that you're not super ready to put back in harness full-time. He was your number 1 catching option to start the year. You have 2 solid options defensively that have been holding their own offensively. Joel Pozo has forced his way in. And now you have the choice between, hey, do we send Pozo down, who's hitting above 300 and catching very well? Do we send Baker down, who are we struggling to find at bats for?
Yeah, and I think between Pozo and Baker, it makes sense to keep Pozo right now. You mentioned the aspect of ramping Herrera back up with his duties behind the plate. That's certainly part of the conversation. But I think also let's take away Pozo as a catcher. Even if that wasn't a benefit, which I think it clearly is as Herrera gets back into the swing of things, what's more valuable right now to the roster as just a bat coming off the bench between Pozo and Baker, the way the two of them are performing? Like, you can make your jokes, oh, here we go with roster management again. The Cardinals have so many catchers on the team, but really, what does it matter positionally what somebody is if they're bat in the role that they might end up filling, especially once Herrera is ready to go defensively, is more just about being able to provide a little bit of extra thump. I think right now we prefer Pozo's bat to Baker. And it's not a matter of, oh, go get Baker some playing time in Memphis. That's not the same as a Thomas Saggese. I mean, Luken Baker's 28 years old. If his role is going to come in the big leagues, it's going to be the one that he had with the Cardinals so far this season, but he hadn't quite been performing, and Pozo is. So positions aside, I'd have no problem with it. But when you add in what I consider to be a benefit of an additional catcher, just to give you a little more coverage if you find that you need it as Herrera gets back into the swing of things, I think that's a benefit to the Cardinals as well. And especially when you think about what the role had been for Luken Baker from the beginning of the year. He was DHing against lefties for a while. I haven't seen it as much in recent weeks, but that's not really something that's going to be available to him either. As you try to work Herrera back in, it makes sense, I would think, to have him DH more predominantly against left-handers, and those can be games where it's either Pages or Pozo behind the plate, since Herrera's not going to catch 162. He's not going to be on that pace behind the plate. think it makes sense. You got to find ways to get his bat in the lineup with the way that he performed early on. Hopefully he's able to continue that once we see him again over the weekend. Don't believe that has been officially announced by the Cardinals, but we've all seen the transaction of Luken going to AAA, and it is presumed that that's the alternative move that's going to come within the next 24 hours.
It certainly would make sense, right? And you add a little bit more power out of the DH role, which the Cardinals have desperately needed. The power has started to come along. Some of these slumping players have started to bloom a little bit, with Alec Burleson coming to mind. Wilson Contreras, he's on a 19 or 20 game active on base streak. He's been fantastic. So it'll be great to see how the Cardinals react to this shakeup of the lineup. But I want to put the pressure on the fans here and discuss this transaction from an alternative perspective. Right? Let's just say Luken Baker was hitting and Joel Pozo wasn't. Wouldn't you be arguing that Joel Pozo should be the one that goes down? Wouldn't you be making that same argument? The ones that are in defense of Baker, who wasn't getting the same amount of at-bats because of his lack of a natural position, it doesn't make as much sense to send a guy like Pozo down. It doesn't, especially considering his numbers. So you look at what choices they had. Pozo didn't give them much of one because of how well he'd been performing.
Yeah, and I feel like it ends up being sort of an easy punchline type of reply or comment to say, hey, they've got 3 catchers. And like there would be some who would say, well, they've got 4 catchers. Wilson Contreras is a full-time first baseman. That's his role now. Sure, if they got into a pinch, be a different story, but they're not in a pinch. They're not close to a pinch when it comes to the catcher spot. So, yeah, they've got 3. But it's going to be a situation where you just are afforded that extra luxury of what Pozo's bat is bringing to the table, as you mentioned. And is that just the most perfect alignment for a roster? Maybe not. But as we see the way Oliver Marmol is managing lately, there's not been a ton of opportunities anyway to, take an infielder out for an infielder who hits with a different hand in the late innings so that they can maximize the matchups. This has been a stretch of season where they're intentionally giving the guys those opportunities, like Gorman. If he's starting the game, he's liable to finish the game more often than not because they're looking to get him those late inning at bats and see how he responds to those opportunities. So I don't think it, and you may say, well, that's not going to help them in the win-loss column. They might not win as many games if they're not maximizing platoon splits and things that you would normally say are a priority. You're right. We've acknowledged, though, that the number one thing isn't necessarily win the most games. It's try to win games under the guidelines that are being established, which is guys like Walker, guys like Gorman are going to play. And when they play, they're liable to finish those games or go deeper into them rather than be looking for the first spot to, rescue them from the lineup and put somebody in that's a better matchup. That kind of defeats the purpose of the runway. And people are tired of hearing the term runway, but I think it's relevant to what the Cardinals are trying to do this year. And lo and behold, they're back to 500 with this strategy. So it is an aspect where imagine what could happen if guys like Gorman and Walker do find themselves. They're both clearly struggling right now. And if the Cardinals are winning, more days than not, it might be in spite of those players. Although yesterday you can point to a key clutch hit by Jordan Walker that drove in 2 runs and made it so that they didn't have to use Ryan Helsley in the 9th. You got a spot for Roycroft. So he's contributing in that regard. If those guys can consistently contribute in the roles that they're in, and the Cardinals have largely been winning without major contributions from those 2 spots, suddenly, yeah, I get it. Maybe the roster's a little bit clogged and it's not perfect. It's a lot better than it was last year when you just had guys like Brandon Crawford and Matt Carpenter lefties off your bench when you really were hunger for a right-handed hitting option like a Pozo now provides with a 300 average. So, there are aspects of this roster that are light years better than what you had last year in terms of the puzzle pieces fitting together. So they'll have 3 catchers for a little while. I consider that a feature, though, more than I do a bug.
Well, the team is building for the future. I think there's no doubt about it when you look at what they have in the minor leagues, what they have on the field right now. It's a young team, and they're holding their own, which is a good sign for years to come. But all content provided by DraftKings here. The crown is yours. Cards Hub 365 is powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Brenden, Schaeffer, Stefan, Caray here on a fantastic Thursday afternoon. And the Cardinals looking ahead to a 3-game series against the Washington Nationals. Pitching matchups Friday, Eric Fedde versus the lefty Mitchell Parker. Fedde has struggled a little bit in his last few starts, trying to get back in the saddle. Andre Palante has struggled in his last couple of starts against Trevor Williams, the veteran. Miles Michaelis on Sunday versus Mackenzie Gore, the ace of the Nats. one of the big pieces in that Juan Soto trade a few years ago, has been fantastic for the Nationals over the last few seasons. That's your outlook for the next 3 games. And I think they're very winnable for the Cardinals if they can keep the young stars of the Nationals under control.
Yeah, I think this might end up being a series that's more about the bats continuing some momentum than it is shutdown pitching performances. And you probably happen to stumble upon one. Fedde, of course, you could go with the revenge game narrative, former Washington National himself. And yeah, he's been struggling a little bit recently. Palante hasn't been quite as sharp. And we know with Michael is you're just generally looking for him to keep you in the ball game, and he's done a pretty good job of that outside of one start this season. So with the way the rotation lines up, I almost prefer it for the Cardinals because the bats can sort of take that onus and say, look, we're into a portion of our rotation that's maybe not been as sharp. Those guys will take pride in their performance as well, and hopefully one or two of them does give you that quality start or better. But then is it a weekend where we can kind of say, hey, look, the road narrative surrounding this Cardinals team, 4-13 record, can they put it behind them with a series win? And again, the record still wouldn't reflect great numbers on the road, but if they can go out and score 5-6 runs per game and get requisite pitching performances, the bullpen can continue trending in a positive direction as it's been over the past week and a half or so. I think you could find the Cardinals feeling the vibes much deeper into this road trip, despite being away from Busch Stadium. We know what they've done at that park, but I think this is a good way to start the road trip. And then look, if you can find 2 of 3, maybe more in DC, then you talk about Liberatore and Sonny Gray lining up for maybe a tougher matchup against Philadelphia. This is a really interesting spot where the Cardinals can maybe try to grab the ladder and climb above 500 a little bit. And those vibes can be self-sustaining for a team that suddenly, as it's contending, it might start to believe that it can do so and could work wonders for the outlook for the rest of the season if this road trip goes well.
You're absolutely right. I mean, if they win 2 out of 3 and 2 out of those 3 series, they're 1 game above 500. If they lose 2 out of 3 in 2 out of those 3 series, then they're 1 game under 500, which still isn't a horrible place to be. You just don't want to get swept. And that's the reality here is in these 3-game series, you got to win 1. If you're against the Nationals, that's the type of team you want to take advantage of, just like the Pirates. Yes, the Phillies are a tougher team, but you have 2 of your best starters coming out. Then you have, of course, you have the Kansas City Royals right across the state who have been good. They've been a frisky team in that AL Central Division, so you can't overlook them. This is a Cardinals squad that is going to be gritty. They're going to find ways to win the game. They're going to find ways to play in close games, and it just depends on how they handle that. But I think all in all, the hitting's been better, the bullpen has been much better, and the starting pitching has been right around where they've been all year, which has been extremely, extremely good.
And I know the Cardinals are coming off of a sweep of the Pirates, and then their manager, by the way, getting relieved of his duties today after that series. But I wouldn't have necessarily predicted a sweep coming into the Pirates series because of that Skeens game looming. You think, all right, 2 out of 3 would be okay. I could see a realm in which the Cardinals keep this streak going, though, in D.C. and do sweep the Nationals. If Fedde goes 6-inning, 1 run, and that can be a tone setter for the weekend, and score 4, 5, 6 runs a game, I would not be surprised if the Cardinals are riding an 8-game winning streak heading into Philadelphia a little bit later this week.
I'm curious to see how they're going to handle Steven Matz. Are they going to have him as a long man? Are they going to schedule a start for him? How do they assess that, address that? He pitched for 1 inning, I believe, in that finale. So you get Steven Matz potentially as a starter. You're going to get some innings eaten, but I almost would prefer him, just as a pure opinion, coming out of the pen in case you get in trouble, because that's been the saving grace for the Cardinals. There aren't a lot of teams that have a bona fide starting pitcher that can come out and get them 4 innings or 3 innings. And they've had it with Matz, and they used it with McGreevy the other night, and it saved their bullpen. I think that's one of the biggest keys as to how the Cardinals have maintained success is the bullpen management has been fantastic by Ollie Marmol over the last 2 weeks.
And I think one aspect of this, as you look at a guy like Matz, and I'll throw Graceffo into this conversation as well, you think about the way that they closed out the Skeens game with Matz and Graceffo, 1 inning apiece. Those aren't your leverage relievers the way you normally think of it, but that's how they were used in that game. Now, what afforded Oliver Marmol the ability to do that, the luxury of being able to put those guys in for those short stints? It's getting 7-inning outings like Matthew Liberatore provided. It's having it happen again yesterday with Sonny Gray, and now you've got an off day. So that bullpen should be rested and ready to go, and I expect Oliver Marmol to manage this series very aggressively. in trying to get as many of these games in DC to keep the good vibes flowing and to provide proof of concept that this is a roster that has talent and can be in contention, whether it's in the wild card race or in the division, as the Cardinals still look up at the Chicago Cubs. I'll be very interested as well to see the way that goes. But with all these off days in the month of May, Matz can remain in the bullpen, which is where I believe he will stay for the time being. And it's a luxury to have a starting pitcher out there, as you mentioned, to give you multiples. It's a different kind of luxury when that guy can also moonlight as a leverage guy when your other leverage guys are down. And even in the case on Tuesday against Paul Skeens, their leverage guys from the left side weren't down. I mean, Jojo Romero hadn't pitched, John King. So, it's very interesting to me that Matz can also sort of double as, hey, in a pinch, you need a tough inning from a left-hander. Matz can do that too. I don't know what that type of role pays after a season of him doing it for 6 months, and he's a free agent to be, but credit to him for being willing to perform in that role, doing it to the best of his ability, and providing the Cardinals with this luxury where it benefits him personally, obviously, to pitch well, but it's probably not the height of his benefit to be oscillated back and forth between these less prominent roles compared to if they had just let him run in the rotation and earn a big paycheck from either the Cardinals or somebody else next year. Very underrated what Steven Matz is providing right now. And when you have a day where you go Leahy, Maton, Helsley, like Oliver Marmol had to do on Monday after the worst missed call that I had ever seen by replay review, then Tuesday when it's Matz and Graceffo, you're like, well, that's kind of your B squad on that day. And yet they were lights out too. A bullpen that has more than 3 or 4 options. And right now, Oliver Marmol might have 6 or 7 that he can really feel trust in. That's another aspect that could benefit the Cardinals this weekend, as you mentioned.
It's certainly a big difference compared to what we were talking about 3 weeks ago. But if it wasn't obvious, baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Going to want to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Stefan, Caray, Brenden, Schaeffer here on Cards Hub 365, which is powered by Gray Bar. All content here is provided by DraftKings, as we just illuminated you all with. The crown is yours. Cardinals on a 5-game winning streak, their longest win streak of the season. You believe that they have the momentum to keep that up at Nationals Park in our nation's capital. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, the Nationals are a very young, exciting team. They are a lot like the Cardinals in that way, except the difference is their division is less open than the National League Central. That is a closed-off division between the Mets, the Phillies, the Braves. It is tough sledding to try and win in the National League East. But you have prospects like James Wood, like C.J. Abrams, like Dylan Cruz that have made some headlines.
Yeah, they've got some interesting pieces, and it feels like that Soto trade in particular has added some good names. You mentioned Mackenzie Gore to that organization. And now we're kind of in the spot for their rebuild, or whatever you might call it, where a lot of those guys are reaching the big league level. They're reaching their potential as MLB players. And then they're going to start to ask the question of, okay, what do you put around those players? And we'll see. I feel like there are some comparisons to be made to the Cardinals, but from a lineup standpoint, I also feel like there are maybe some comparisons to be made to the team that the Cardinals just beat in the Pirates. I don't think the Pirates' offensive names are young and ascending in the same way, but in the direction of they've got a few guys that you have to watch out for in Pittsburgh, and then the rest of the lineup is, a work in progress, to put it kindly. Can the Cardinals pitching staff find ways to navigate around some of the guys you got to look out for, like Abrams, like Wood, and certainly don't overlook Dylan Cruz just because of his slow start to the season? Can they navigate around some of those guys and then be able to do what they need to do against the players that are more unproven at the big league level and find a way to get a lot of zeros up on the board, get deep into games, and continue to allow Cardinal manager Oliver Marmol to have those luxurious picks when it comes to his bullpen choices on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, with the off day coming today and the fact that your rotation has given you some lengthy outings the last couple of days, you feel like everybody's going to be rested and ready to go, and he's going to be able to be aggressive. If Fetty can give you 6 innings, quality start, to be aggressive with deploying that bullpen and find ways to keep this momentum going.
Well, I think the mantra for tomorrow's game is going to be familiarity, and whether or not it breeds contempt remains to be seen. But Fetty has pitched at that ballpark. He's familiar with the organization. He's familiar with some of the players that have come through the pipeline. The other aspect of this that the Cardinals will be familiar with is they played the Nationals a ton during spring training, a ton. Now, I get it. It's spring training. Guys are working out things. But it's not like you're going and facing the Dodgers, who you just be seeing for the first time in a year, right? You've seen the Nationals plenty of times. You know the strengths and weaknesses because of the geographic proximity. I think that this is a team that the Cardinals can really take advantage of over the next couple of games.
Yeah, I think by the time you get to Sunday and Mackenzie Gore, you maybe say that's going to be a little bit more of a trying matchup just because of what he's capable of doing when he's right and potentially mowing down some hitters. But yeah, I think if you look back at the spring and the fact that they're sitting over there in West Palm Beach, the Cardinals and Jupiter, it's a natural alignment that you're going to see from time to time, a handful of times throughout each spring. Cardinals are more than familiar with, I would say, scouting reports on a lot of these hitters, because it's not like, yes, it's spring training, but it's not like the Nationals have a ton of guys where you go, yeah, that's the veterans that you're going to give them a bunch of off days during the spring, or there's a bunch of younger players and guys who are kind of trying to prove themselves at the big league level. So I imagine there's a book on a lot of these hitters. Like you said, the familiarity for Fetty, that'd be the guy I would want to see start this series. If I were picking the order of the 3 Cardinal starters that are about to go this weekend, I think getting Fetty out there first and allowing him to not only set the tone against the team that he's got familiarity with, but to be able to kind of put the recency behind him. The key for him is let's feed these guys strikes. This is a lineup that there's a few guys who can burn you, but feed strikes to the rest of them and try to get over the woes he's had recently when it comes to bases on balls. I think if he can do that, that's a way to set the tone. And then you can say, hey, 6 in a row, move into the rest of the series. You're not going to fear Mackenzie Gore because you just beat Paul Skeens. You know what it takes to beat quality starters, and they've done it a lot this year. It almost feels like when the Cardinals face a name, a guy with a real brand behind his name and carries some recognition, they've fared pretty well. They've said, hey, look, we need our starter to do his job to be able to keep us in the game, but we're going to find our moments to be able to get to guys, whether it's Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Pablo Lopez. This might just be another case of that when you get to Sunday. I think Miles Mikolas is a fine choice as well to oppose a young, talented arm like that, where, yeah, he's maybe going to get more of the headlines in that pitching matchup if you're Mackenzie Gore, but Mikolas can stay steady, do his job. And maybe they get swept this weekend, Stefan, and it look like I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do feel like there is this momentum aspect of the Cardinals where things do set up favorably if they can take advantage and continue to take good at-bats. We did see that in the Pittsburgh series, and we're hoping to see it continue.
Yeah, it's been an auspicious streak for the Cardinals. It is an auspicious day with the new Pope being announced. Brenden, that's all I've got for this series. The Cardinals looking to start off well in our nation's capital. Eric Fetty, motivation has got to be at an all-time high against his former club. For everybody here at Sports Hub STL, for Brenden Schaeffer, I'm Stefan Caray. This show was powered by Gray Bar. All content provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. We will see you tomorrow before the Cardinals face off against the Nationals and continue their 5-game winning streak.